Hi there, and welcome back to another edition of ScaleUp Radio, the podcast inspired by the entrepreneurial scale-up system and designed to make navigating our scale-up journeys that little bit easier by learning from others' experiences. I'm Kevin Brent, and in today's episode, I'm joined by Chris Forbes, who is the co-founder of Cheeky Panda. And Cheeky Panda is a company that started in 2016 from a simple idea of making bamboo tissue products. And it's now grown to a £15 million revenue business with 35 employees. And Chris will share with us the incredible journey of scaling this sustainable business, the challenges they faced, and the key strategies that led to their success. And the standout takeaway for me from this interview with Chris is his emphasis on resilience and adaptability as crucial factors for business success, especially in the face of unexpected challenges. And Chris highlights the numerous obstacles that Cheeky Panda has encountered, from currency fluctuations and Brexit to the COVID-19 pandemic and supply chain crises. And despite these challenges, Cheeky Panda has continued to grow and innovate, driven by a strong mission and strategic planning. You're going to love this episode, and you're going to want to listen to other episodes of ScaleUp Radio. So make sure you don't miss any future episodes by subscribing to us wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. It really makes a difference to us and helps us to get the word out there to more and more entrepreneurs like you. And you can also nominate a guest for ScaleUp Radio if you know someone with an interesting scale-up story, and you can find out how in the show notes below. For now, continue listening on for the full story from Chris. Welcome to another episode of ScaleUp Radio. I'm delighted today to be joined by Chris Forbes, who's the co-founder of Cheeky Panda. So Chris, welcome to ScaleUp Radio.
Thanks very much, Kevin. Delighted to be on the radio show with you today.
Great, and it's great to catch up with you again. You know, we sat next to each other at the table at an awards dinner about a year ago, so it was great to see you online and catch up about a year later. So it's good.
It's a small world.
Isn't it? Isn't it just? So, Cheeky Panda, what's that all about, Chris?
Cheeky Panda is a bamboo tissue and hygiene business. We created the business back in 2016. It was a wife's idea. She came to me and said one day, "Why don't we make tissue out of bamboo?" And I said, "Why would we do that?" And she said, "It's the world's fastest growing plant." And I went, "That seems kind of obvious. Is anybody else doing it?" And she said, "No." I said, "Okay, is it any good?" And she said, "Yeah, it's absolutely, really soft, really sort of luxurious." And I've been doing quite a lot of disruption. Cross-pollination is kind of what we call it. I was doing a lot of work with PwC at the time, and we're taking some of the best ideas out of one sector and then applying it into another sector. Yeah. So the idea to sort of disrupt the hygiene sector, which is a £200 billion sector, seemed like an awful lot of fun. Yes. So without really having run products before, we sort of dived feet first into it. But
equally pretty daunting, because you're playing with some pretty big boys, Kimberly-Clark and to name but one, so not exactly something to go into just on a whim, I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, no, I mean, they've got deep pockets and well-established relationships. So I think whenever you kind of go into something, you always kind of have to sort of plan it. I think, because I'd kind of got like a sort of business entrepreneur mindset, the first thing was download the Harvard Business School template. Spent about 30 hours actually drawing up a sort of full business plan. And that's sort of really useful, because it sort of identifies your operational, your sort of finance, your sort of sales, your marketing. And all right, you're not using the whole template, to the letter. But what it does, I mean, if I sort of look 2 years forward from this sort of initial plan, I'd probably sort of say 70% of it was relevant, and, fail to plan to fail. Yeah. Yeah. And regardless of what document you end up with, it's the thinking, isn't it, that it's taken you through, that you've had to go through to get the start, essentially. Yeah. And I'd used, and I'd watched what Brewdog were doing, and I thought they did the punks for equity, and I thought it was fascinating, because, like, in yesteryear, in sort of like the 80s or 90s, it's very hard to create brands, access to capital and stuff like that, and so there wasn't so much entrepreneurship within consumer, but with access to crowdfunding, and I thought it was a very clever way that what they'd done with their punks for equity and their sort of building our sort of community, we decided to sort of launch the business on Crowdcube. And with the basis of if we successfully fund it in Crowdcube, which is a relatively low limit of £10,000, we'll do the business. If we don't get there, if nobody backs it, then we might think it's a good idea, but nobody else thinks it's a good idea. So if strangers can sort of buy products blind because they think it's a good idea, then it really sort of validates the business case. And that had lots of unexpected consequences for us, because we could actually then go to sort of smaller retailers and show we had market demand.
Yeah.
So we were able to pre-sell the product. So before we'd actually got the product in and developed the product, we'd actually pre-sold the product. So, and that's great, because what happened is when we got the product in, we started off with about 10 grand worth of monthly recurring revenue. And lots of businesses wait till they get the product before they actually start selling the product. And it just creates a sort of a longer tail, and then longer burn. So it was a thanks very much to James Watt for that. Subsequently I met him recently as well. So that was quite a sort of nice full circle.
No, very good. So yes, I might come back and drill down a little bit more into your experiences at Crowdcube, because that's something that I'm sure a lot of people will be interested in hearing your particular learnings from that. So I might come back to that in a minute. And so let's fast forward to now. Where can you give us an idea of where you are with Cheeky Panda now? What sort of scale have you got to?
Yeah, so from a business that me and my wife started in the bedroom, we're now sort of like a £15 million recurring revenue turnover business. 35 people in the team, some great partners as well, and sort of like operations and logistics and manufacturing. 30 in London, 5 in China. We sort of do the quality control and product development with us. And we're in about 30 different countries. In the UK, we're about 10,000 stores. And that includes like multiple stores, like places like Boots and Waitrose. And fun fact, we sell about 1 toilet tissue every 2 seconds.
Oh, very good. Excellent. Love it. And you're a B Corp as well, I believe?
Yeah, so we were one of the first 100 companies in the UK to become a B Corp, and I think there's now sort of growing on for 10,000 B Corps in the UK. So we were one of the pioneers of the B Corp movement. Very proud of that. And I think B Corp is really strong foundations, is what I would call it. And this is kind of why we sort of did it, without necessarily knowing how popular it was going to be at the time. But, if you build on sort of strong frameworks around people, environment, social purpose, then actually, it really sort of sets yourself up for long-term success. And I think that's the way that, modern businesses should be behaving. And not just profit at all costs, but to actually try to get, and it's absolutely core to your values and your beliefs, isn't it? And, that's part of the sustainability, environmental impact, the whole reason for going down the bamboo route and everything, isn't it? From the very start. It fits. It fits really well, and I'm a big supporter of the B Corp movement, and I've sat as chair of the packaging committee as well, where all different brands within the B Corp get together and sort of share challenges around sustainability within supply chain. So I think if you can kind of leave a positive legacy, in terms of sharing knowledge and making things better, then I think we end up with a better society. And I'm a big believer in in a world of stretched resources, that we can all share knowledge and actually create stronger foundations, and we live in a better world tomorrow. And if we all become selfish and don't share resources, then we end up of lots of finger pointing, and unfortunately that ends up into war, famine, sort of very, very, a world that I don't want to be part of. And if we can all sort of make the right effort, then we can end up with the world we want to live in, not the world we don't want to live in.
Yeah, absolutely. No, okay, excellent. So you mentioned sustainability in the supply chain. What are some of the key challenges and trends maybe in the sector that you're in?
I think probably the most complicated one, we obviously make tissue from bamboo, which is the world's fastest growing plant. So we know that's like highly renewable, and next to sort of sun and water, that's just a great product to be able to use. But then you're kind of really getting into more detailed carbon analysis. So we've recently completed our scope 1, 2, 3. We've become EcoVadis certified. And I think that's something that a lot of businesses kind of really want. And, so you really have to go into the weeds in terms of your supply chain about, how things are made and the energy consumption and the water consumption and all the different materials and the packaging. And, I think the more you can understand it, I think Tony Chocolonely's did a really, really great thing in terms of open supply chain, and Cheeky Panda is trying to do similar sort of things in terms of let's just be transparent. Let's just say everything's not perfect. But no, if we can all start to kind of show what it is today and then it actually works to a better tomorrow, then actually, it creates a roadmap. And I think that's something that, all brands and, consumer goods and, actually most industries could actually learn a lesson from about sort of it's integrity, it's openness, and your customers love it as well. So I think there's a lot to be said for that open, honest, integrity piece in supply chain and carbon assessment.
And what does it take to succeed in hygiene products? In your world, what does it take to succeed?
I think anybody that's running a business and has been running a business like over the last sort of 8 years or last couple of years, I think probably the number one is resilience these days. And I probably wouldn't have said that 8 years ago.
Yeah.
But we have so many unexpected events. I think, when we started the business, we sort of pegged the sort of sales prices versus the dollar and the sterling, and dollar was 150, and then within about 3 months it dropped to 125. We're like, all right, okay, that's and then we've obviously had real seismic events. It's just like COVID, supply chain crises, energy crises, war and just general uncertainty, Brexit. There's just been lots and lots of different things that we've all had to navigate through. So I think that resilience, and just because there's an obstacle set put in your way, is how can you think around that obstacle? And you really need to be sort of very agile these days, I think, and we don't know what's going to happen next. And one of my favorite statements is we see more black swans than we see white swans these days. It's become black swan events, which is like once every 10 years, and it's almost like we see one of these every year. So I think that sort of that resilience is probably the number one thing for me.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Good. Excellent. So I'd just like to explore with you your thoughts on some of the challenges that we see with businesses when they're scaling up. Some of the challenges to scaling up. Get your take on it if we can, and then also maybe some specific challenges that you face along the way. So from research that we've done and work with clients, if we take businesses as a whole, and this includes relatively small businesses, the sort of micro SME sort of end, right the way through to some larger businesses. But in the early days, one of the things we see is getting dragged back into the day-to-day operations as a key challenge. We see generating leads of sufficient quantity and quality as a real challenge. Finding the right staff or having the right staff in place to support growth, and then getting the staff to think and act and take responsibility in the way that we'd like them to as business owners. And then the fifth one on the top five is then keeping on track with the plan. How do they resonate with you?
I mean, they're all extremely relevant. I think what I would say is there's different horses for different courses. And then what I would sort of say is how you think as a sub £1 million business is different to what you think is a £5 million business. It's different to what you think is a £10 million business. Yeah. And subsequently sort of ratchets up. And a lot of people, think it's about having these shiny, people's names on CVs, and they work for such and such, so they're going to be good. And there's a lot of myth busting that needs to happen. And I think for entrepreneurs or business owners, at the end of the day, you're lucky because you actually understand the business from the ground up. You actually understand everything about the business, and not necessarily everybody that comes in will be as passionate or knowledgeable as you. However, they might also think that they're an expert as well. So it's kind of sort of balancing the sort of founders, and different people have got different personalities. Some people like to be really into the control and into the detail. You need to detach yourself from that. And I think that's kind of like, the people in the organization and the culture. You need to set like a culture that you're happy with. I always kind of sort of say that, you spend half your life working So you want to be working with people that you actually enjoy working with. And if you're not working with people you enjoy working with, then it can actually become quite miserable. So it's very, very important. Doesn't matter how brilliant someone might be, is to actually get the right cultural fit. And the right cultural fit can, create a really positive environment, and the wrong cultural fit can create a negative environment. I think, the scale up piece is cultural fit is probably, and I've seen this from a lot of different business owners as well that, that I talk to. We all basically say the cultural fit and scale up is number one, because you can have the best products in the world, but if people, the sales aren't right, and the distribution isn't right, and then people can't buy it, or the marketing messages are wrong, then all these things can contribute to that you've got a lot of potential, but you're not going to realize it. Yeah. So in summary, I think that's kind of against those five is probably people the number one thing that that all the rest of it fall under.
Yes, there's that idea, isn't there? That I've forgotten who said it now. You can probably enlighten me, but essentially, I'd rather have a really good team and a poor strategy than a brilliant strategy and a poor team. Because if I've got a poor strategy and a good team, they'll sort the strategy out, basically.
Yeah, and you can't, if you've got a great strategy about a poor team, you can't execute them. So, yeah. I think like as a Drucker statement, that is culture and strategy for breakfast.
Yeah, that's it. So how have you avoided getting dragged back into the day-to-day operations then? Because obviously, if you go right back to the start, as you say, just starting with you and your wife, and now, can you think back to those early days, how you avoided just getting yourself dragged back into the day-to-day?
Well, I think we realized, I think there's probably quite a few things here. We realized that the first thing we realized is that the first 3 years of business is very hard to get access to capital. And I know there's more solutions today than what there was when we started, but they're still very, very expensive solutions. It's like 2% APR per month, which is 24%, which kind of wipes out any profit that you get. So we kind of sort of realized, and the wife was doing like operations and finance at the beginning, and that's not sustainable. So we kind of sort of realized, okay, let's go and get some investment, let's go and raise some equity, and then, hire like a small team of people that can do sort of admin, administration, and, finance functions. So you can kind of get out of the weeds of the back office and kind of more into the front office, which is how you build a business, which is sort of sales, marketing, brand, products. Fortunately for us, because we're co-founders and because we're got different strengths. So Julie is actually really good on the management side of things in terms of like, setting up like, sort of OKR and systems and sort of CRM and, a lot of the technology, and like setting that company direction and doing sort of products and marketing, where I'm kind of sort of more sort of sales, PR and investment. So actually we complement each other as founders. I always kind of sort of think if you've got two founders that are just very, very similar, you could probably end up clashing a lot about stuff that you don't really need to clash about. So I think having that sort of complementary founder thing has been a massive strength for us.
And how did you mentioned, as you say, and indeed our research about that very much, is that the challenges do change. We sub 1 million and then up to 5 million and beyond they do change. So, how have you seen those challenges change as you've scaled? Because you're now well beyond that 10 million as well now. So how have you seen the challenges change?
I think so. When you start up, and startup's fun, right? Because you can take a lot of risks and you can make a lot of bets, and if those bets go wrong, it doesn't really hurt you that much because you're just trying lots of different things. The bigger you get, the bigger the bet. And the bigger, if you get stuff wrong, then what might have been like sort of $2,000, $5,000 becomes 50 to 100,000, right? And it's so it becomes enterprise risk profiles is what happens. So it actually kind of slows you down a little bit because you have to actually think things through in a lot more cautious way, and that's not naturally the like entrepreneurs who kind of like new shiny stuff. So almost kind of as you kind of sort of grow through an evolution of a business and the size of the business, you kind of need to adapt with it. And probably that's my sort of biggest learning is, is having to think that just because you did one thing one way, it's just you're not going to be able to repeat those types of things, unless you're very, very lucky. And you build a more enterprise risk mindset as you grow.
Yeah, okay, good. And how you mentioned the importance of culture and fit and all of those things. What practical tips have you got for people as to how to do that? Because it's we all hear it and we all know the importance, but actually achieving it is not so easy, is it?
I think I think there's different people for different stages as well, right? So somebody that you sort of might be a graduate that kind of just wants to have everything chucked at them so they can learn lots, right? As soon as it starts coming out of that phase, I mean, some people just don't like it when it gets to like that sort of £5 million level. So, the team that you start with might not necessarily be the team that you scale with. Sometimes you're lucky you actually get people that come all the way through, but you might realize you kind of need different people for different stages. And I think the other thing is to trust your gut as well on people. People are very good at selling themselves in interviews, having been a headhunter previously. So you really got to develop really good interview tactics and questions, because it's not about being sold to and somebody saying, oh, look how brilliant I am, right? At the end of the day, you're going to end up working with them. So you really need to kind of know that they've got the skills that you're looking for. And, it's part of your job to really do the assessment on that, rather than just be sold to, and then you get somebody and you think, oh God, I shouldn't have hired them. A lot of the entrepreneurs say sort of hire slower, fire fast. And if you have, which kind of puts the brakes on, and kind of sort of like goes against the sort of entrepreneurship mindset. But there's a lot of wisdom in that. But if somebody's going to be with you for sort of like 3 to 5 years, it's important you get the right person. Yeah,
and the cost of a bad hire can be really quite a lot, can't it?
It's time as much as anything else. I think it's financial cost, but it's all right. You hire someone, you might take sort of 3 to 6 months to find out they're not a fit, and then you kind of sort of maybe sort of give them another sort of 3 to 6 months to sort of see if it kind of work through. And then what you've done is you've lost a year, and then you've got to start the process again. So then it takes it's 18 months, and it's probably quite a bit of money, and I think that's. But nobody's perfect, and you'll get stuff wrong. I mean, I think I think all entrepreneurs will admit that a lot of the teams that they bring in, they have to sort of chop and change them quite a bit to get it to get them to where they want to be.
Yeah. So you mentioned having to have great interview questions, and have you got any particular questions or tips for how to go about doing that?
Each job's different. Different. So each job should have its own sort of set of sort of like sales is kind of for me it's kind of solution selling. It's show me how you can solution sell, not just sell on price, but sell on value. From marketing, it's kind of like show me examples of your portfolios. Let's look at the work that you've done previously. I think that's always a good sort of indication if you can kind of sort of like point to stuff. And we do quite a bit of workshops as well, particularly for sort of more senior hires. And that takes quite a bit of risk out, because they have to show you the business plan for that particular business unit. Okay. And then that means that everybody kind of goes into it with their eyes open, and it just it means that the candidate knows exactly what's expected of them, because they've had to think about how they would perform if they were in the business. And then we get to sort of sign off on that. So it's kind of like we all kind of sort of join up on that. And that's
so you're actually, whichever business unit they're part of, they're a senior person, you're sharing real information. You're giving them the challenge to come back and analyze.
Yeah, you show them. You'd show them data. You'd sign NDAs. And you wouldn't do that in the first interview. You'd probably do that as a final step. And then we sort of do a panel. So it'd be like a workshop for 2-3 hours, and just go through it. And I think that certainly is a good technique.
Good. And how do you one of the early challenges that we see, and again, it's taking you back a bit, but it's all linked a little bit, but it's transitioning from being, the two of you driving everything at the beginning to then transitioning to be able to drive results through others. Essentially, you mentioned, so you mentioned a couple of things already, but anything specific you can add around that as to how we managed to go from being that sort of leader, follow me leader sort of type approach to actually building other leaders within the business.
it really depends on the person, right? So I am more of a I did classify as like a leader, and Julie classifies a little bit more as an engineer. And I kind of, but I don't like the management side of things, ironically.
Right.
I like empowerment. I like to give high level direction and just basically sort of say, okay, this is what we're trying to achieve, and let's all kind of sit around and work to that. But that doesn't necessarily go into sort of developing people in terms of strengths and weaknesses. I can do coaching, but I can't do more tough management, where actually Julie's really good at that side of things and sort of getting the best out of people.
Yeah.
So we use her to lean in more into that sort of, here's where you are, and here's where we need to get to, and here's all the different sort of stages that you've got to go through to get there. Experience teaches you an awful lot, and you can kind of, the more experience you have, the easier it is to do this sort of stuff. And it's hard earlier on because sometimes you've not had any experience, and then you're trying to sort of develop people that might have more experience than you, but you want them to develop what I would call an entrepreneurial mindset. And if they work at a large corporate, they might not have been encountered that before. So, it's almost kind of like a different type of training than what would come out of the box.
Yeah. No, very good, excellent. And you mentioned something already, but keeping on track with the plan is tricky. And as you scale and you got more people, it becomes harder and harder and harder. How do you keep on track? How do you make sure the business is on track with where you want to get to?
The thing is it's. I think you always kind of got to remind yourself, why you got into the business in the first place, and what the purpose of the business is. And I think if you always stay close to what the core purpose is of the business, and you don't get sort of detracted, then you won't that people then appreciate that within the team as well, right? So I think that we always kind of sort of remind ourselves that actually there's an issue with deforestation in the world. We're bringing out products where the big guys haven't wanted to do it, and helping make a big difference. And if that's kind of what your mission is, and it's stay close to your mission and don't have too many missions.
Okay, and you mentioned OKRs as well, so that as a way of tracking. Then, so that's a pretty good system, isn't it? Around objectives, key results, getting everybody really clear on breaking that down into actually individual roles, then as to what they're trying to achieve. Yeah,
don't try and do it on a spreadsheet, for goodness sake. There's some great tools out there, like Trello or sort of like Monday and stuff like that. So, and then that means everybody can then be attached to the OKRs, and you can track and you can monitor them against dates and stuff like that. So, some great tools out there these days to be able to kind of do that. And if you're not familiar with OKRs, then strongly recommend that you look at, the rule of 5, and how you can set key objectives of like a quarter to help people navigate what's important to them, because it's very easy for everybody to get distracted. But you always kind of got to remember, like, what are we really trying to do? Or when you're functioning, what's your key tasks and what's your key sort of key achievements?
Yeah, so the rule of 5 and the frequency being quarterly. Yeah, to really, brilliant. Good. So you mentioned as well finance, and you talked about CrowdCube right from the very beginning.
Yeah, it's crowdfunding we used at the beginning, which is just like a rewards platform. And then we did equity crowdfunding, which was through Seeders. So, it was.
And what would you pull out from there as things that people thinking about doing that should bear in mind?
Well, I think, markets are a wheel, right? So there's good times and there's bad times. Currently, there's not as much cash going around as the cost of living crisis has meant that, there's not as much disposable income. And I think, sort of peak, sort of like 2019 to sort of 2021 was good times. So we were quite fortunate that we kind of got into, raising capital. And Seeders was very, very new when we started. And I didn't have any money when I started my campaign. But we ended up sort of closing it in 4 weeks and raising like £500,000. So I think a lot of people kind of sort of bought into the value of that. And it just kind of sort of gave us a platform, and we were able to grow. And then sort of the next year we went back again, and just sort of like every sort of year we just kept going back, and our sales increased and our distribution increased, and our products and our market, and people just kind of got very sort of familiar, and it's kind of sort of built a community. So there's a lot of value, particularly if you're in a subscription type business or business where you're kind of close to your consumer, that you can actually build that loyalty as well. So but it's very hard for businesses under 3 years old to get access to capital. So, I think, in our case, we were buying a container of goods, which, we might spend like sort of £15,000 on that up front. And then by the time it got made, shipped, distributed through warehouse, and then the clients paid us, it'd be 9 months.
Yeah.
So when you're doing like 20 grand a month, then you're basically running £180,000 worth of cash flow and financing. Yeah. And then when you're 100, you're then running almost like £1 million. And you before 3 years, the bank's not going to lend you £1 million.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the biggest challenge that we had, was the working capital requirements of such a long supply chain. And that's why we had to sort of raise capital, because we wouldn't have been able to survive. And now we've got great bank finance, because guess what? Once you actually get to a certain size, financing is easy. Everyone wants to give you stuff when you don't need it. No one wants to give it to you when you do need it. So I think that's just cash is king is always kind of my mantra. Is just try to make sure that you've got a plan about have you got enough, and what's around the corner.
And have you been able to do anything to change that cash flow, that working capital requirement, or does it still operate exactly as it was at the beginning?
Oh, no. I mean, once you get to a certain size, you get access to invoice finance is the first thing you get access to. And then sort of like later down the line, you get access to like trade finance. And then that basically can complete the whole end of the trade life cycle. So if we could take on, £10 million worth of additional business today, we would need additional cash to take that business on.
Yeah.
Where if it was 3 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to do it. We would have had to do some sort of debt thing or some sort of equity funding.
Excellent. So if you were to look back over the journey, what things would you highlight as things that you got right that have really contributed to the success?
I think taking risks is probably one of the taking educated risks, right, and understanding that not everything works, and you get some things right and you get some things wrong. I'll give you an example. When in 2018, our paper products were wrapped in plastic, and our biggest line was our packs and lines, which were wrapped in plastic, and it was said, wrapped in plastic because you get no returns. It's a nice, safe material. And we were like, well, we don't like plastic, right? We want to get rid of plastic. So we basically discontinued our biggest selling line. So it didn't even make it an option, just discontinued it and had to change all the barcodes and replaced it with a new line, which was wrapped in paper, without knowing how many sort of returns we get. And I think a lot of people would have said, just don't do that. That's suicide. But 3 months later, we doubled our sales on that product.
Wow.
So I'm pretty sure if I said that to my operations team today, they would be like, "No, don't do that. For goodness sake, no." So I think sometimes that's the entrepreneur's gut of, we think this is the right thing to do, and actually for us it was kind of part of the mission thing as well. So so it's that bravery, I think, is if you look at the numbers and you do the maths and you're comfortable with it, don't let people dissuade you otherwise, because at the end of the day, it's your business and ultimately it's your decision. And you live by the sword and you die by the sword. So if you're going to die, you might as well die doing it the way that you want to do it, rather than being sort of cajoled into something that doesn't really fit right for you.
Yeah.
And then you'll be very upset at the end of it, because I should have done that and somebody talked me out of it. So I think listen to people when you need to listen to people, and listen to yourself when you need to listen to yourself.
Okay, fantastic. And similar question, but if look back over those years, what, if anything, would you do differently?
I mean, I'd love the market to be different. I'd love the climate of what's going on. It's I think the hardest thing for us, and the most challenging thing for us was sort of during COVID and sort of during 2021, when we had sort of like a massive growth, was not being able to meet people when we were hiring them. And I'd love to have been able to meet them. And we, at that time, that was when we should have been bringing a senior management team, but it was just chaos. We weren't able to actually stand back from the coalface because there was just so much going on and so many different elements of what was going on. It was just very hard to get any breathing space. And I think if it had been more conventional markets, and then we would have done things. We certainly would have brought a CFO and a lawyer earlier, and I think that would have been hugely beneficial. But they probably would have let me do half the things that I did in those years as well. So it's hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? It's I think the fact that we've built this size of the business today already is we've done a great job, and the team's done a great job, and everybody at the company that's worked both past and present should be immensely proud of what we've achieved.
Absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely. So, in terms of how you measure success, then what are the key performance indicators that you look at? What measures do you want to see on a regular basis?
How many trees have we saved?
Okay.
I think I will say well over 1 million trees by people buying our products. And I think that's kind of like we're one planet, and sort of that's kind of probably a purpose one. Creating jobs, giving purpose. We've had customers write to us and just say thank you for doing what you're doing, and a lot of people have got like skin conditions and health problems, and they've used our bamboo products and they don't get irritation, and that sort of stuff is is hugely rewarding. So we don't pay ourselves an awful lot of money. We're sort of more into the long sort of equity game, so it's not like we're sort of sitting with sort of massive financial rewards. I think at some point that will crystallize, but for us it's just kind of like are we running a good business? Are we doing the right thing well? We're treating our people well, and I think those things are probably what success looks like for me.
Yeah, brilliant. And you kind of mentioned a little bit there, but what's the end game? What's the legacy as well that you're trying to leave?
I think we were inspired in our business by Innocent, and we thought that was a great business, and we thought that like fizzy drinks were bad, and no natural juices is better, and then we sort of looked at that with sort of tissue, and what we'd love to do is we'd love to leave a legacy where people think, I want to do what Cheeky Panda did. And, maybe they do that with like household products or other products, and they because if everybody then creates better products with less plastic and then more sustainable, then, we live in a stronger economy. And we don't end up with these sort of like finger pointing politics that kind of go on, and sort of like social, economic, geopolitical issues. Actually just live in a better, fairer world. And, if that's what we've inspired people to do, then there's different ways you can do that. And, I think we've got shareholders, so at some point they'll be expecting some crystallization from their investment, and, whether that's, going public, which is something that, I've always been interested in. I haven't been in markets previously. Or, there might be some sort of acquisition at some point, or we might acquire companies, who knows. But I think that the most important thing is, is kind of that legacy piece.
Yeah, brilliant. Good. Well, it's been absolutely fascinating talking with you, Chris, and I think I could keep asking you great questions for a long time and listen to your answers. I know it'd be great, but I know you're a busy person. Are you all right for a couple of quick fire questions before we?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Wrap up?
Yeah,
brilliant. So, if you could go back to your younger self, don't know when that would be, but some time your younger self, what advice would you give the young Chris?
She likes you, ask her out.
Brilliant. Love it. You obviously are a learner. You're constantly learning. What learning resources would you highlight to people to look at, whether that be books, podcasts, any particular things you'd highlight to people?
YouTube's so great these days. You can just find any sort of really good expert content in there. But surround yourself by experts, and if you can't find the experts in person, then just go on places like YouTube, because it's free and there's some great advice on there. So seek, always be seeking. Brilliant.
Any particular gurus, experts, books, authors, whatever that you would point out, highlight?
I like management thinking. So great success stories is probably some of the stuff that I look at. I'm wide read. I'm wide in general, and I can find as much interesting information about sort of D2C marketing as I can sort of in, like a Forbes, greatest technology stories or lessons from markets is.
Yeah, so you're obviously keeping an eye out on, you mentioned James Watt and Brewdog, and you mentioned Innocent. You're obviously keeping an eye out on industry leaders, and not just in your sector, which I think was really, really great as well. So industry is.
Yeah, and I was taught that. I mean, I was taught that in early ages. Seek world class. Seek for what the best is in any sector, and then see how you can take those lessons and try to replicate it.
Yeah, brilliant. You mentioned a couple of bits of technology apps and things. Anything in particular that you use a lot, found very useful?
We find NetSuite really useful, and I think if you're in consumer goods, you need a proper ERP system for inventory management. Packages like Xero aren't really sort of fit for purpose for managing stock. So you just end up with lots of errors and lots of headaches for accounting. So the earlier, if you think the earlier you can invest in that and plan to do it yourself as much as possible, the more you can own of it. Technology is great if it's used well. If it's used badly, it's more of a headache. So try to keep it lean and mean.
Brilliant. And you mentioned James Watt and a couple of others, but any particular industry leaders or leaders that you admire that stand out for you?
What, as individuals? I mean, I would have said Elon Musk, but he seems to have lost it these days. I don't. You just I think he came out when he's trying to sue people for not advertising on his platform. What are you doing?
Yeah.
I mean, I think Bezos is, he's a great example about like how he could kind of gone from basically being an online bookstore to a multi-asset business, and of course, and then you look at like what Google and Alphabet have done. I definitely prefer that to sort of like Meta. I prefer some of the stuff that in tech is kind of what I look towards, and and sort of like how can we do some of that stuff in consumer.
Yeah. And what's your most successful lead generation tactic? What's your best way of finding new customers?
Yourself is the best way to find customers. You can't replicate a founder, and so use the founder as much as possible. And I think that's why I like doing these events and stuff like that. It kind of helps put a connection behind the people and the business, and I think that's then they're making sure you've got a team behind you that can deal with any sort of inquiries that sort of come from it. But yeah, it's try to lead from the front. Is lead by example is the best way to win business.
And finally, then, if people would like to get hold of you or find out more about Cheeky Panda, what's the best way for them to do that?
I always accept LinkedIn connections. So just Chris Forbes, you'll see the guy with the panda hat on LinkedIn. If you want to go to the website, if you're interested in products, it's CheekyPanda.com. If you run a business and you want to have more sustainable products, then we supply business products, so like hand towels and toilet tissue. So yeah, we're all very approachable. I can't promise that I'll get you back to you personally, but I can always promise that one of the team will be able to deal with any requests.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think you go everywhere with that hat, don't you, with your Cheeky Panda hat?
I mean, it's our thing now. And I think, Richard Branson said, we're the brand. And I took it literally. So I walk about like a panda. I think it's in a room of crowded people. If I'm wearing a panda hat, I'm the most interesting person in the room.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Chris Forbes, thank you very much indeed for coming on ScaleUp Radio and being my guest today.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I really enjoyed it, and have a great day.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion, and if you're building and scaling your own business, you might well be interested in our book, The Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a practical handbook around scaling a business in a structured way. And you can order a copy on all your favorite online retailers, including an audio version, or you can find it and other supporting resources on our website, www.esusgroup.co.uk. That's esusgroup.co.uk, which is esusgroup.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.